I don't know. When you start to do things in life, you don't necessarily mean to do them. I never meant to publish any books. I just ran into Chinese poetry and discovered I love the art of translation. I love taking a text and then trying to put it into English. And so I'm just addicted to translation. And I don't know when I'll stop. I wonder about that sometimes, because you certainly don't, it's not like a money-making career, but I've always loved to do it. So what tonight I'm going to do is read from this book, Wei Wu, a Tang Dynasty poet. Tang Dynasty was around the 7th, 8th, 9th centuries in China. It's the most famous period of Chinese poetry. All the great poets lived in the Tang. And Wei Wu has always been ranked in, say, the top 5 or 6. But nobody ever translated his poems before because they were so difficult in many regards. And I just happened to become friends with him, as a translator does. A translator learns how to get inside somebody. I tell people translation is like dancing. You have to learn how to dance with your partner. You have to feel their energy. And then you dance with them, so your English doesn't become Chinese. It's English. It's an English dance accompanied a Chinese dancer. And so I just fell in love with this man named Wei Wu. We become good friends. And I thought I'd read a few of his poems tonight. And so I've taken a small selection from a brief period in his life, just a couple of years. His family was the most famous family in all of China during the Tang Dynasty. It produced 14 prime ministers. And yet he lived in hard times and without success, and lived as a minor official because his parents or his grandparents there was a revolution and they were on the wrong side of it, apparently. And so he was not a successful official. Probably the most important relationship of his life was his wife, who he married when she was 16 and he was 19. And her name, nobody knew her name until I published, just before I published this book, after I'd sent a manuscript off to Copper Canyon. I happened to travel in Xi'an, and I was looking for perhaps the grave of this man. And through a series of coincidences, this man came to my hotel room in Xi'an, who the police had arrested, and he'd been released. He told me the story of how he had found the tombstone of this man, Wei Wu, that told us how he had fallen in love with his wife, and her name was Buddha Power, and she was a Buddhist. And so his whole life, he was one of the most, came from this great prestigious family, who served as an official, but all he wanted to do was to live a simple life, maybe in a monastery or in a village. So I'm going to read a series of poems about right after his wife's death, which is, maybe he's in his 30s now. They've been married around 10, 12 years. The funeral. Suddenly, the time is here, the auspicious chosen date. The team of horses whinny. The hearse departs the ancestral hall. This was where we lived our lives until we were parted by death. What good is this brief moment if we just end up in the hills? The cortege left by the city's south gate. Southward I gazed toward the ragged ridges. The sun went down, clouds appeared. I cried all night in the bitter wind. Into the tomb I looked at dawn, saying farewell. I could only tremble. Into the ground the coffin vanished. I looked up at the sun's bright light. A moment later it was over. Even the graveside trees looked bleak. I stood, unable to move. I couldn't leave with my heart in a knot. Our daughter sensed what we had lost. She wailed and clutched my robe. This is still too sudden. The months and years too hard to forget. And so about 2 or 3 months after his wife died, one of his best friends was the chief magistrate of the capital, and arranged for him to have a minor post in a small town about 30, 40 kilometers from the capital. And so here he is he's the magistrate of Huxian, and this is a poem entitled, Letting My Eyes Roam at May Reservoir While Serving as Magistrate of Huxian. 夜水延长塘，烟光揽晴儿，翻问路数多，藏翠千山处。有一时可见，星河尚未密，绿往新路线，恨无离人为。Where water surges along the embankment, mist swirls in a sunny sky. Green is taking over the trees. There's jade on 1,000 mountains. Fish are swimming up to the surface. Lotuses aren't thick yet. I come here to be alone with my thoughts. I regret lacking social skills. Here's one called Call of the Cuckoo. The cuckoo calls at night. 高林的路夏夜晴，南山则归啼一声。邻家双妇抱儿啼，我独辗转何时明？ Dew drips from tall trees on a clear summer night. In the hills to the south, a cuckoo calls. The widow next door comforts her child. I turn in bed and wait for first light.